I really wanted to talk to you about the fact Mike Johnson is now reopening the House, which means guess what's back on the docket? The Epstein files.
So what will happen, theoretically, is that the House will vote to subpoena the Epstein file, or files. Theoretically, it is everything that exists within the United States government on Jeffrey Epstein.
Michael.
Joanna.
So much to discuss. Last time I saw you, the Democrats were riding high off their victory from the election, and now what's happened?
And they were also winning the shutdown. Hands down, this was their shutdown, which doesn't usually happen, that the opposition party can claim victory on this. But given that it is Trump who can be counted on to so often shoot himself in the foot again and again, because fundamentally he is self-destructive. So when he's taking food, snatching food from babies, when he's not snatching babies themselves, to refusing to find money to pay the air controllers, to again and again and again, essentially being willing and enjoying it to disrupt major parts of American life. This is what he was doing. I am going to do that. So there he was, remote, disengaged, having parties, uncaring, and, a complete shit. So that's what we went into. And suddenly, yesterday, the Democrats are like, okay, we give up.
It was incomprehensible to me, too. And also, it's very unusual to see the Democrats turn on each other. I mean, you had Gavin Newsom saying this is unconditional surrender. At the other side of the country, if Newsom's in California and New York, Richie Torres is saying this is ridiculous. How do we make sense of this?
I mean, the Democrats, I guess we make sense by saying the Democrats are the Democrats. And ultimately, they fall back, or a good in this case, a decisive margin of the Democrats fell back on seeing this as politics as usual, instead of politics as Trump, exclusively Trump, anomalously Trump, never to be the same Trump. This is like we're in the Senate, and the Senate doesn't like this, and we have to be practical and
I think they're seeing lines for food, right? And they're thinking this is really bad. I think they're genuinely caring, the people that made the decision,
absolutely,
right?
Absolutely, but they are seeing this as a political event rather than an existential one.
But the crazy of it, because even Trump knew that the Republicans were losing the shutdown. He actually said people are blaming the Republicans for it.
He did, but what he did also say, and has been saying within the White House, is in his threes, they'll fold, they'll fold, they'll fold. And if they do, we win, we win, we win.
He's saying that in the White House?
Yes, he said this to both aides because the Republicans have been really worried about this. Essentially, this has not involved the Democrats. What it had been up until yesterday, involving the Republicans negotiating against each other. How do we get this guy, Trump, to sit down for a meeting, listen to the Democrats, appear to come to some kind of compromise. Work it out, as these things have always been worked out. And that didn't happen because he doesn't do it. He doesn't, I am the greatest negotiator on earth. In truth, he is not a negotiator, or the worst negotiator, but really not a negotiator. It's my way or the highway. Always my way or the highway.
So what's inside Trump's head? Because he was feeling a bit raw coming off the Democratic victory. He just did a fiery interview with Laura Ingraham. where she pushed back on his idea for 50-year mortgages. She pushed back on the idea that people are feeling good about the economy. She pushed back on the idea that the polls giving him terrible ratings are fake.
This is just Trump, who has one mindset, all or nothing, which I'll point out is the title of my last book. You know, my last book is about the campaign, and the campaign was just again, 4 indictments, 1 criminal conviction. It didn't make any difference to him. Just do not alter your position at all. And if you do this, if you are irrational, then the rational people actually fold. That's what they do. Those people in the Senate, those 8 senators, all, career politicians, completely rational, all about cause and effect. They could have been, it was a reliable prediction.
But does the Democratic Party now split into the people who understand how to deal with Trump, or at least think they understand?
None of them understand. They really don't. Yes, there was a glimmer at this point that they would go the distance, but I don't know how much more distance they would actually go. And I've got to believe that these 8 people did this because that was basically the mood of the party. So Chuck Schumer, who people are blaming for this, and other people saying, well, he's not to blame. Yeah, I'm sure he is to blame. And I'm sure that there was a tacit kind of thing within the Democratic Party, certainly among the Senate Democrats, which was, how much longer can we really go on this?
Right, and 2 of them are retiring, and then the other 6, none of them are up for re-election next year.
Right.
So they're relatively safe in terms of no one will remember this probably next month, but certainly not by the next election.
We're back to that thing that Trump fights an asymmetrical battle. And they don't get it at all. They're still we're politicians and we do what politicians do.
They're still fighting George W. Bush.
I know. Yeah, they're still just doing what they've done for their whole careers. We have a process job. It's about procedures. It's about cause and effect. We know this. Trump, no. Trump is all or nothing. No, those are diametrically opposite mindsets. I mean, Trump will go down. He is willing to go down. Now, people don't let him go down because I think they don't know how to do that. They don't really. And they're looking at this and saying, this is a crazy man. What's the crazy man going to do? We better do something. So that fundamental political precept. If the opposition is immolating itself, do nothing. Instead, they helped. They gave it to him.
Did you see the Laura Ingraham interview?
No one ever sees any interviews anymore,
right.
Except
Did you see the clips?
Donald Trump. Yes, I saw the clips.
What did you think?
Well, I knew what was going on, so.
Well, that's really what I'm asking. What was going on?
Yeah, so Laura Ingraham at Fox, she is the anchor who is the mouthpiece for the Fox owner, Rupert Murdoch. Everybody else is kind of difficult and doing whatever they have to do to get the best ratings they can possibly get. The Fox people have wanted to fire Laura Ingraham for a long time. She doesn't really get ratings, but she is protected by Rupert Murdoch. Therefore, she says what Rupert Murdoch wants her to say or what Rupert Murdoch wants to be said. So in that interview, and Rupert Murdoch, has this deeply, tragically conflicted relationship with Donald Trump, who he detests. But nevertheless, Donald Trump is the president of the United States, and Rupert's relationship to power is, he understands power.
Right, he understands where it is and how to get the fallout from it.
He understands what he has to do. So he is theoretically a Trump ally at this point, but that's on thin ice. And so he uses his outlets. The Wall Street Journal is often opposed to Trump. Fox less so, but in this instance, it was. So Murdoch would have been aware that this interview was set up, and then he would have been on the phone with Laura Ingraham, and she would have taken notes. Now, that is also difficult because to be on the phone with Rupert Murdoch, I can do it.
But no one can understand what he says.
Yes. So more power to her.
Right.
But she certainly delivered that was not the Fox line. It was the Rupert Murdoch line.
Okay, well, I love the line where she walked around the Oval Office and said, is this all from Home Depot, talking about all the gold decor, because he's saying, oh, you can't just get paint that has gold in it. That seemed a good line and sort of slightly withering of him. And then his strange understanding that most people's mortgages were for 40 years and now we were extending them to 50, and she had to correct them and say 30.
Yeah, no. I mean, Rupert literally would have called her up and said, "That asshole." That's his always the bottom line when it comes to Rupert's view of Trump.
Well,
he's an asshole.
And you say,
what an asshole.
I can't even begin to do his accent or his mumble. But you say in the first book, Fire and Fury, it's Rupert's great tragedy. He always wanted to make a president of the United States. The fact is he made it Trump, and he hates Trump and doesn't respect him.
Yes, the great irony is that it is Donald Trump.
There's also an anecdote in your book, The Fool. I'm sounding like one of those super fans who now turns up at a book reading and has all your books in a pile and asks you to sign them. I promise you I'm not that. But there is
I'm willing to sign anyone's books. Come with as many as you have.
All right, or you can send them to the Daily Beast offices and we'll get them signed for you.
A colleague of mine from Vanity Fair who sent me his copy of Fire and Fury, annotated, and asked me to sign it. This was very nice. Well, now what is that? Almost 6 years later, I look at that book constantly, and somehow I cannot bring myself to, I have signed it, to put it in an envelope and go to the mailbox and the post office and send it back. It's just a moment of guilt constantly in my life, just to point that out.
Okay, so well then just remove it from your office.
Yes.
All right, you can send them to us and I'll fake sign them. No, we'll have you sign them on the podcast as we're talking. But my point is, there is an anecdote about Laura Ingraham, at Roger Ailes' funeral. Ingraham. Okay, Ingraham. You say Ingraham. Yeah. I don't know what to say. But there is an anecdote about her at the funeral, because don't you fly down to Roger Ailes' funeral?
My wife and I
Sean
flying
Hannity.
down on Sean Hannity's plane, which is an entirely other story how that came to be.
And that should be another episode of the podcast.
But at the funeral, in Roger Ailes' funeral in Palm Beach, Laura Ingraham was there, and I've always been friendly with her. And when we saw each other in the church, we had a nice conversation. But from that point, progressively on, she got drunker and drunker and drunker, drunk to the point of in the 1960s on television, there was always this character. Of the drunken character, and which is not really how people act when they get drunk, but this is how actually Laura Ingraham acted. The speech, the slurred speech, she couldn't stand straight, her hands all over you, and then on the way back, she wanted a ride back. She didn't come down with us, but she wanted a ride back on Sean Hannity's plane. And Hannity said no. So he kind of whispered sotto voce, no way. Those planes, that bathroom is very small. We do not want to see that.
What do you mean that bathroom is very small? We do not want to see that.
On the plane when she threw up.
Oh, she was that drunk, and the plane would be bumped.
Yes.
Well, what was the Cessna four-seater?
No, but but it wasn't that. It was a respectable private plane,
Okay.
but not a super private plane. I mean,
Right. Does Sean Hannity have his own plane, or was it rented for the event?
It does. He does have his own plane, but a smaller executive plane.
Smaller executive plane. Okay. Well, we've somehow
The
got
bathroom
distracted.
is right there, and you didn't want to go because it's like.
Okay, got it. Yeah. I thought Laura pushed back against Trump quite well, more effectively than Norah O'Donnell on 60 Minutes looked stern, but she didn't really push back as much as Laura did.
They were both carrying water. Laura for Rupert Murdoch, Norah O'Donnell for the 60-minute CBS. And who's that company that bought CBS?
Skydance and Paramount.
Whatever those executives were saying, this is, go
Well, Barry Weiss, Barry Weiss.
Go gentle on Trump. Matter of fact, that may well have been part of their settlement in the 60 Minutes suit. So $15 million plus go gentle on Donald Trump.
Okay, which brings us neatly to the BBC, which lost its Director General and its head of news, Tim Davie and Deb Turness, who used to be the head of NBC News. They both resigned this week after accusations that Panorama, their flagship documentary show, had actually elided two different speeches.
So the thing is, we can break that. What they did was they shouldn't have done, and was a mistake, which you should have been able to apologize for, and life goes on. They had to resign, bringing the BBC to its knees in many respects right now because, enormous political pressure within the UK against the BBC, but also Trump now threatening to sue him for $1 billion, and we ought to say that the person threatening to sue the BBC for $1 billion is also the person who threatened to sue me for $1 billion. The lawyer. So
Alessandro Brito.
Exactly. So this guy in Florida who is now kind of runs, the Trump libel industrial complex. You just send out these things, and everybody, including now the BBC, goes, clasps its breasts and panics and now fires its executives. And I will again say that I am the only one who has not panicked and has fired back, and the GoFundMe page is still open, still collecting, because I am not going to fold at any rate. But I don't want to get off the BBC because I don't want to. I also want to say. Two things can be true at the same time: that they're getting screwed by across the right-wing political spectrum, including the right wing in the UK and the right wing in the White House. But having said that, the other thing that's true is the BBC. If anyone, I have never met such arrogant people, such remote people. What world do they live in? This is so. While I would never have, what has happened to them is completely unfair. At the same time, they deserve everything they get.
I don't feel as strongly as you do about the BBC. As a British
because
person,
you're inculcated.
Well, as a British person, I grew up. There were 3 channels to watch, and you always felt like it was reliable, that it was doing its best. The institution is always going to be bigger than any one person that works there, right? I think also Tim Davies had a difficult time because their lead anchor, the man who announced the Queen's death on television, got into trouble because he was paying underage boys to send him photos of themselves naked.
Yes, that old British
chestnut
habit.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's not a British habit. It's definitely not a British habit. It is extraordinary how they just gave Trump this gift, though.
I am speechless.
I know, literally, when your enemy is committing suicide, what do you do?
All they
quietly.
had to do was just wait this out. He would have. And they said, well, he would never have crumbled. What are you talking about? He had the following choices, and to crumble or to get rid of the filibuster, which other people in the Senate were not going to do, or to continue on. He was going to get the blame on this.
But all the energy that the Democrats had from the election victory now feels like it's just blown away on the wind.
Totally.
Blown away on the wind.
And so the larger story here is that we are beginning this year, now formally beginning the year to the 2026 midterms. And those are going to involve a reckoning in the Democratic Party. And that will then be the precursor to what happens in 2028. But this is the kind of thing, and we ought to be able to start to frame that story, because this is a big story. I mean, together with the Trump story, which is obviously the biggest story and will be the biggest story for the next 100 years. But what the Democrats are now going to do, the spotlight is on them, and the onus is on them.
Well, certainly as far as I could see, Newsom was the first person out on social media saying the Democrats have unconditionally surrendered. This is terrible.
Well, yeah, and I think Newsom is the first one out of the gate. I mean, he is out of the gate for 2028. He is running for president, clearly, and he will, in order to do this, he will look to step up for 2026.
Right.
And remember, 2026 is going to be pivotal. That is the moment that could truly, and we don't have to wait till 2028, bring down Donald Trump.
We could have a ticker here just counting down the days, because it's whatever it is, 363 days to the next election, to the midterms. It's very exciting. I mean, I saw that your friend Trey Parker had made a comment saying that it's not that South Park has become political, it's that politics has become pop culture, and we are all engaged now. I mean, the idea that you would have a ticker and you would be excited about the midterm elections, who knew that that was something anyone would ever say?
Matt Stone is really my friend in that duo. And I should tell the story at some point about when I thought that Matt Stone should be the president of the United States, and when I got Steve Bannon, who I thought should abandon Trump. And I said, this is your real populist candidate. And then I had them both to dinner at my house. A complete catastrophe.
Well, go on. Why? What happened?
Well, they just didn't click in any way. I mean, Matt was utterly contemptuous of Steve Bannon, and Bannon was not able to rise to the populist occasion.
All right, well then that does bring us to Steve Bannon and his expression, burning daylight, that neither of us knew what it meant. But in fact, thank you, scores of people actually wrote in to tell us that it means don't waste time, you're burning daylight, daylight is valuable. And then someone said that it was actually, it made an appearance in a John Wayne movie.
The Cowboy.
Right. The Cowboy, okay, which I'm sure that Steve Bannon has seen, where burning daylight is a John Wayne line in the movie The Cowboys, and that's from Beer Checkonen. Anyway, thank you.
Anyway, if anyone else has any other point of view on that, we're
open. I liked it. It's a great expression. All right, so I really wanted to talk to you about the fact Mike Johnson is now reopening the House, which means guess what's back on the docket? The Epstein files.
Well, not that it ever left, frankly.
Okay, well, it was just hovering.
Yes.
It was simmering on the back burner,
Yes.
And now it's being moved to the front burner.
So what will happen, theoretically, is that the House will vote to subpoena the Epstein file, or files. And
those things that Pam Bondi had on her desk in
Well,
February.
we don't know. I assume what she had on her desk was nothing, blank
paper.
pieces of paper, which is part of the problem, and that is now going to become the next part of this battle. So they are going to subpoena something, but they don't know what they are subpoenaing, and then it will be, they'll have to figure out exactly what that is. And the executive branch which will have to deliver this material, will define what that is. I mean, within the hands of the executive branch is the ability now to define what that is, plus its own, I suspect, confusion about what it is and where it is, and then what they redact and don't redact. So the executive branch, even with a vote in Congress, is still basically in charge of this material, of this Epstein file.
Okay, which is the stuff that the FBI has, right?
Well, we don't know. I mean, it's theoretically, it is everything that exists within the United States government on Jeffrey Epstein.
And just to remind people, this is the joint effort between Thomas Massie, the very independent-leaning Republican, and Congressman Ro Khanna from California. The two of them got together, they've got enough Republican votes with Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, and Nancy Mace, plus the Republicans, to get 218 votes, which means they can demand the files.
Right. So let's look where the files are. There are what the FBI holds. There is what the Justice Department holds. And while the FBI reports the Justice Department, those are not necessarily material in the same place. Plus, that's would be considered what Main Justice holds. Then there's the Southern District in New York, and then there is the Florida District, and that's just within that framework. There is in potentially throughout other parts of the government and what they know about Jeffrey Epstein. Including the financial investigations that have at various times begun about Epstein and his business endeavors and business relationships, and plus there is on the local level. He was actually convicted in Florida state court, not in federal court. So this is just spread far and wide, and it will be sort of up to Congress to kind of define what they're looking for. Those will, if an investigation actually begins, if hearings actually happen, then that's the question. Where is this?
Right.
What
are they?
Know?
Right.
How do we define this information about this guy?
Which leads us nicely on. That's the Oversight Committee doing their job there. But on the Judiciary Committee, Jamie Raskin, the Democrat from Maryland, has been asking about Ghislaine Maxwell's what seems to be preferential treatment at Bryan, the jail she was transferred to from her less salubrious jail in Florida after the 2-day interview with the number 2 in the Justice Department, Todd Blanche.
Yes, from a terrible jail in Florida to a jail, a club fed, which sex offenders are by statute excluded from.
It's also interesting when you have a sex offender who has offended against women in a women's jail. I'm assuming this doesn't happen very often. Because in a man's jail, don't they get put into solitary confinement for their own protection?
I don't know, but there aren't that many women sex offenders.
Right, and certainly not that are sentenced to 20 years for sex trafficking. And I wanted to read you the story that we had in The Beast. I wanted to read you some of the details because it was kind of amazing. So this is Jamie Raskin saying that a top prison official is complaining that he is sick of being Ghislaine Maxwell's bitch at her cushy new prison digs. Apparently she has a puppy, and the Maryland lawmaker, I'm reading a paragraph here, alleged that anyone pushing back against the grotesque pampering of Maxwell is being punished and retaliated against by prison warden Tanisha Hall. And Maxwell was transferred to the low security camp where she has her own private physical trainer, and she's getting her own meals delivered to her in her cell. I mean, I would quite like my own personal exercise classes and to have meals delivered to me. I don't want to go to jail, obviously, but I'm just mentioning it. I mean, if you've got to be in jail, it's not bad. And then we know that she sent emails to her family saying this is so much better, and the warden is actually one of the more professional people I have met in the prison system. I wonder if she could give a review of her prisons. She could go on Yelp.
Let me just briefly digress and say...
Don't digress too much, because I am fascinated by her.
Well, let's go, because, I mean, her leverage here is much more powerful than $50,000 or whatever contribution she might be able to make. Her leverage here is the President of the United States. Let's be very clear. I mean, it is clear, it is transparent what is happening here. Let's go back. The Wall Street Journal published a Donald Trump's birthday greeting to Jeffrey Epstein on the occasion of his 50th birthday. A birthday greeting which did not, let us say, redound to Donald Trump's advantage.
Well, it talked about their wonderful secret that they shared.
Exactly.
And we want to know what the wonderful secret was.
Right. So within the White House, everyone immediately understood that this was a leak from the Maxwell family and describing it as a shot across the bow. Mm-hmm. Almost immediately, several days later, the number 2 in the Justice Department was sent down to Florida to interview Ghislaine Maxwell, a sex offender. Now, this is the number 2 in the Justice Department, who just happened to have formerly been Donald Trump's personal lawyer. But this would never happen. Not in the realm of logic would the number 2 in the Justice Department personally go and interview a convicted sex offender. Anyway, he goes and interviews the convicted sex offender, Ghislaine Maxwell. Shortly thereafter, there is a transcript of their interview released in which clearly Ghislaine Maxwell is utterly on script. Donald Trump is the greatest guy. Love the guy.
Never saw anything inappropriate.
Never. I mean, everything.
And also, Todd Blanche was pretty fawning towards her. Seemed very, thanked her profusely for doing this interview, as if she had lots of other things to do and wasn't stuck in prison for the next 20 years.
The amazing thing is how transparent this was. I mean, it's kind of confusing. The thing about cover-ups is that they're supposed to be hidden. I mean, what is it even called when the cover-up is out? It's
released on a transcript.
And then almost immediately afterward, she is transferred from her terrible prison to a vastly better prison. On the way, I think we can reasonably assume, to a pardon or commutation of her sentence. And again, the cover-up is completely out in the open.
Well, Jamie Raskin is on the case, wanting to know what's going on there. And of course, that wasn't, he may be thinking of pardoning Ghislaine Maxwell, but he's actually just pardoned 77 people on his crew, the people who were denying that the 2020 election had been won by Joe Biden.
No, I mean, and to pardon Ghislaine Maxwell would seem to be appalling, except that she just joins the long list of other appalling pardons.
True. The difference here is, I think, that there is a very motivated, articulate, attractive group of Epstein victims who will not take this lying down.
Well, I think that they will not take this lying down, and this will continue to haunt Donald Trump. But what it avoids is the person potentially with the smoking gun. So he will not have, he seems to have arranged it, so he will not have Ghislaine Maxwell saying on this day in Palm Beach in 1999, Trump was with this girl, or whatever else she might say. And obviously, there is great fear about what she might say because of everything that we're seeing that she is getting not to say it. So he avoids that. So in that respect, the out in the open cover-up will probably succeed. Yes, the Epstein matter will go on. Yes, people will continue to try to get to the bottom of it, including yours truly. But that pivotal witness, Ghislaine Maxwell, that pivotal person who is effectively a co-conspirator, will be quiet.
Right, well, that brings us to questions that we have for Melania. Many of you have written in with excellent questions. This is a great question. This is from P. Fay. Question for Melania. With your apparent expertise in matter of hair, makeup and styling, why have you never assisted your husband in these areas?
I mean, this is
a fantastic question.
Yeah, I mean, this is a complicated, because you have to understand that actually Donald Trump believes he is the consummate Mr. Styled. He would, and I've actually heard this explanation. Actually, makes this explanation to Stormy Daniels. She's one of the few, but this is a great part in her book in which she asks him. They're in bed, and she asks him, so what's with the hair?
What's with the hair, right?
And then he gives an explanation that his hair he was always very proud of his hair, and then he got older and he started to have to do things to it to maintain it. But now, rather than seeing this has become ridiculous, he understands it has become a signature. It is Donald Trump, and people identify him with the hair. It is and I even think he used one of those words. It's a a brand enhancer, something like that.
Brand enhancer.
So he for a guy who looks absurd, he is actually aware of that and has cultivated that and has seen the advantage in that.
And didn't Jeffrey Epstein tell you that Donald Trump had a scalp reduction?
Yes.
I didn't even know that was a thing. I'd never even heard of it.
Yeah.
Until then.
So you reduce the bald scalp. So it has the exposed surface is
smaller. But also P. Fay assumes that Melania hasn't helped him with his styling. There are two other possibilities here. One, she has, and she likes what he looks like, and she finds the fake tan attractive and the confection of hair attractive. Or it could be that she's deliberately helped him with this because she thought it made him look ridiculous and that he would somehow not get elected because he looked so strange. And indeed, as you say, it turned out to be a brand enhancement.
Okay, I'm now officially in over my head here.
Okay, so another question for Melania, this time from Camille P. Question for Melania. What was it about Donald that you fell in love with? His energy, he was a man about town, successful businessman.
Yeah, I think that's the answer. You got it.
Okay, and here's a question from Senior Swifty. Ask Melania, what does be best mean? And given his many infidelities, why haven't you divorced Donald Trump?
Well, I think that the answer to that, there is divorce and there is divorce. When you really don't have to live with your husband, and you leave a parallel life and he leads a parallel life, and everybody and the financial arrangements stay the same. This is, rich people don't have to get divorced. They have a lot of real estate.
I live parallel life. Parallel life. Okay. All right. So more questions, please, for Melania. Michael.
And these questions, remember, I am answering these questions as best I can, but I will have the opportunity, I'm counting on, to ask her directly.
Yeah, so we're compiling
these are
huge
questions,
list of
just
questions.
To remind, they're not for me. They are literally for...
No, they're for Melania. These are people asking you to ask Melania on their behalf.
Under oath.
Under oath. So she will undoubtedly be best under oath.
What do you think that means?
Be best? Be best. I don't know, but we like be beast, as you know. It just means release your inner beast. You don't need to release your inner beast because your inner beast is already out there. You have an outer beast. You don't need to worry about your inner beast. But other people need a little encouragement to release their inner beast, and that's all we do at the end of each episode. So we'll be back on Thursday with more of what it's like inside Trump's head. But how do you think it's feeling today? I think it's feeling sunnier inside Trump's head, don't you?
This was a wholly unexpected. Well, no. You see, I shouldn't say that. I think for everyone around him, it was an unexpected victory. For him, it's just plain to victory. I just wait for the victory. I can wait as long as anyone. And and he was right. They'll fold, and then I'll win. And that is what happened. And why the Democrats can't understand how to play this guy, why they don't call me up and at least have a conversation. I really do understand something about this guy, because they don't.
If you have been, thank you for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast. We are independent media, so we really appreciate your support. And leave us a comment. Leave us a comment on what you think about what the Democrats decided to do. And did Donald Trump predict it? That our BB's members got extra content because they got to see got the tape of our live event.
We did a live event together at this museum of the city of New York, and we had a great time.
Well, not this museum, the Museum of the City of New York, that very kindly welcomed us in.
Yes, no, it's
it
true.
gave us a flawless experience.
I was unaware that this museum existed, but
it turns out to be a fabulous museum. They had a huge picture of our design on the stage.
Yeah, and a sold-out audience, so what could be better?
Sold-out audience and lots of very thoughtful questions. So thank you to everybody who came, and thank you to the museum. And we are available for weddings, bar mitzvahs, whatever you need.
And thank you.
Thank you. Don't forget to be Beast. And you should read the Be Beast members because it's funny when you do it.
And the growing list of Be Beast... you made me say this now.
Finally, I've made you say it.
The growing list of members: Herbie, Andrew Mellor, Fulvia Orlando, Laz Conde, Sandra Clark, our favorite, Bonzo, Val Love Francisco, whoa, that's my new favorite, Bobcock DC, Karen White, Heidi Riley, Connie Rutherford, Sharon Shipley, Andrea...
And does Andrea have a last name? I think it's Hodel.
No, Andrea...
Hodel. Thanks to our production team, Devon Rogerino, Anna von Urson, and Jessie Millwood.